Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as your chairperson of the Senate Committee on National Defense and Security, Peace, Unification, and Reconciliation, I am honored to submit to this August Chamber and sponsor Senate Bill number 2501 under Committee Report 173, providing a new separation, retirement, and pension system for the military and the uniformed personnel. This measure is consolidation of Senate Bills 284 filed by this representation, Senate Bill 1421 filed by Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr., Senate Bill 2434 authored by Senator Amy Marcos, Senate Bill 2446 authored by Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, and taking into consideration House Bill 8969, which was passed on third reading by our colleagues in the House of Representatives last September 25, 2023. This measure is included in the legislative agenda under the Philippine Development Plan for 2023 to 2028. This bill is also one of the priority measures identified by the LEDA for the 19th Congress. In fact, the move to rationalize the pension and retirement of schemes of all uniformed personnel veterans have been included in the LEDA's common legislative agenda as early as 13th Congress. Mr. President, I sincerely hope that the 19th Congress will finally address this pressing concern affecting not only the fiscal position of the country, but also the stability in the defense establishment and the uniformed services, as persistent talks of reforming the pension system stirred trepidation and uneasiness among their ranks. According to an actuarial study conducted by the GSIS, the military uniformed personnel's pension system's unfunded liabilities could range from 4.45 trillion to 14.32 trillion, depending on the amount of salary increase if the current system remains in place. Under the 2023 GAA, or General Appropriations Act, more than 128.65 billion pesos is appropriated for MUP pension alone, and another 10.8 billion is appropriated for veterans' pension. Our economic managers from the Department of Finance, with the Bureau of Treasury and the Department of Budget and Management say that this number is expected to significantly increase over the years. To illustrate, the total MUP pension appropriations for this year alone is almost equivalent to this year's appropriation for the personal services of the AFP at 136.239 billion and bigger than the total appropriations for the maintenance and other operating expenses, or MOOE, and capital outlay for all 7 MUP agencies such as the AFP, PNP, PCG, BJMP, BFP, Bucor, and MRIA combined, which is 127.59 billion pesos. Over the past 5 years, the MOE and the capital outlay for MUP grew around 9% annually, while pension liabilities grew more than double the rate at 19% every year. This representation humbly submits before this August Chamber the product of exhaustive dialogues and consultations, most especially with the stakeholders. I would like to place on record the efforts of the economic team, the Department of Finance, with the Treasury, DBM, and GSIS to reach out to all MUP agencies and listen to their concerns. Consultations were conducted from May to July of this year to personally hear the sentiment of our soldiers, policemen, men, and women in uniform on the proposed reforms to their pension system. My office sent representatives to these road shows, and at one point, the group visited 4 cities in 2 days. They visited the Unified Commands in Cebu and Davao during the first day, and Zamboanga and Palawan on the second day. The committee likewise conducted TWG meetings and held one-on-one meetings with the stakeholders. At naging napakalaking tulong ang mga pag-uusap na ito dahil nabigyan ng mukha at boses sa mga numero at datos na ikinukwenta o tinutuos ng ating economic team. Hindi lang po ito basta usapin ng pera at gastos, na ipaloob din dito ang aspeto ng sakripisyo at kabayanihan ng ating mga kawal at uniformadong kawani. Gayon din ang kanilang mahalagang papel na ginagampanan sa pagpapanatili ng kapayapaan at kaayusan na siya susi ng pagunlad ng ating bansa. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, I am pleased to present this piece of legislation that balances the interests of our economic managers with respect to the tight fiscal limitations and honors the constitutional mandate of our military and recognizes the peculiar nature of work of our uniformed personnel whose lives are always at great risk. First and foremost, any reforms to the prevailing pension scheme will only be limited to new entrants. This has been the overwhelming consensus amongst the stakeholders. This means that whatever is being enjoyed by the current pensioners and whatever is expected by those currently in the active service will still will still be enjoyed and received by them. In fact, for some of them, the retirement pay will be higher by 5 percentage points. Hindi po gagalawin, hindi po babaguhin, at hindi po papakailaman ng isinusulong natin paano ka ng batas ang pensyon ng mga pensyonadong retirado. Andiyan pa rin ang tinatawag na automatic indexation. Wala rin pong magiging mababa sa inaasang pensyon ng kasalukuyang mga nasa serbisyo. Kung ano po ang inaasahan nyo matanggap mula nung kayo ay pumasok sa serbisyo, yun po ang inyong matatanggap. Malinaw na malinaw po yan. Meanwhile, the new entrants will be covered by a more sustainable pension regime, one that is assured of adequate funds for the retirement of our military and uniformed personnel at a time when they need it the most, one that is not dependent on the government's limited capacity to set aside funds, therefore, but one that is wholly owned by the contributing members, and one that is self-sufficient for the welfare and varied needs of the retired MUPs in the future. Separate trust funds will be created for the military and for the uniformed personnel, which shall be managed by the GSIS and overseen by the respective military and uniformed services through trust fund committees. The establishment of these trust funds will free up some fiscal space which can be reallocated for the sector's equally important priorities, like the modernization program of our military and other law enforcement agencies, or further expanding the health, education, housing programs for the MUP and their dependents. As our economic managers would like to call it, this will be an investment on peace and security. Under this proposed measure, retirement pay will be pegged to a maximum of 90% of the base pay and longevity pay for all MUP from the current 75% and 85%. While there will be no automatic indexation, there can be annual adjustments in pension depending on the fiscal or economic conditions of the country. Paano po tayo makakasiguro na hindi ito matutulad sa nabulilyasong RSBS o retirement and separation benefit systems noon? At paano masisiguro na masusustentuhan ng pensyon ng ating MUPs sa hinaharap? Una, may kontribusyon ng new entrants. Sa ilalim ng ating panukala, 7% ng base pay, longevity pay ng military personnel, samantalang 9% naman para sa uniformed services. Ito po ay may katapat din kontribusyon mula sa national government na 14% at 12%. Kung matatandaan, sa RSBS ay wala pong naging katumbas na government contribution na isa sa dahilan ng pagiging underfunded nito. Pangalawa, kung sa RSBS maaaring i-refund ang contribution na may kasamang interes sa ilalim na ating panukala, hindi na makukuha ang contribution, ngunit makakatanggap ng separation pay ang mga aalis sa serbisyo. Pangatlo, magkakaroon ng oversight committee na mamamahala sa trust fund kung saan kasaling Finance Secretary at GSIS. Gayon din ang MUP agencies na mabibigyan ng boses sa pangangasiwa at pagpapalago ng pondo. Naasahan din natin ang expertise at mahabang karanasan ng GSIS sa fund management, gaya ng kanilang matagumpay na pagpapalago sa pension fund ng mga civilian employees. The Feliciano Commission, which looked into the AFP-RSBS and established that the previous pension scheme for the military was, to quote, fundamentally flawed, and they recommended that the new pension plan should be contributory on the part of the soldiers. If I may also echo the reminder of our economic managers that contributions to their pension are not tax impositions on income but should be considered as forced savings. Ito po ay sinasantabi at pinalalaguan ng pamahalaan para mapakinabangan ng ating mga magigiting na sundalo, pulis at uniformed personnel sa oras ng kanilang pagre-retiro. Let me also share that the U.S. Department of Defense recently adopted a new retirement system which includes defined contribution rates from service members' monthly basic pay. Mr. President, dear colleagues, I respectfully ask your support to this measure. We cannot continue kicking the can down the road and further avoid or delay the issue of ballooning expenditures in MUP pension. I humbly request the collective wisdom of this august changer in taking on and finally addressing this, if I may say, controversial and sensitive issue that has been cast aside, postponed, if not evaded, many times during past Congresses and had languished in the legislative mill. I trust that the Senate, under the leadership of our Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri, has the political will and firm resolve to squarely face and settle this once and for all. While your Committee on National Defense has exhaustively studied and reached out to all concerned to come up with a substitute measure, this representation as your Defense Committee Chairperson humbly submits to the collective wisdom and guidance of this body, as I always have been. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, my dear colleagues.